I think we are quite unique in what we are doing. So yes, if you see vertical farming is really taking off now. In a time span of 4 years, I think we went from 8 to 80 to 8,000 vertical farms worldwide. And you see a very large increase at the moment happening in the US, the Middle East and Southeast Asia is really taking off.
Herzlich willkommen wieder mal im Café Julius. Wir als traditionelle Krapfenesser haben heute aber etwas ganz was anderes am Tisch, zumindest auf unserem gedanklichen Tisch, nämlich Vertical Farming. Und Krapfen können alles nur nicht vertikal wachsen, da wachsen andere Sachen und darüber reden wir heute mit Emile Stöver. Welcome in the Café Julius.
Danke.
Wir wechseln auf Englisch, das ist nämlich ein nicht nur international führendes Projekt oder international interessantes Projekt, sondern Emile, you're from the Netherlands,
yeah.
And you're here in Austria for 1 year,
yeah.
And he's not speaking as good German as we do. So, all right, Emile, welcome in the Café Julius. Help yourself with the fantastic Krapfen. Mm-hmm. You had one once?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Wonderful coffee and wonderful ideas. That's what Café Julius is famous for. You're from the Vertical Farming Institute. The name suggests a little bit what it's about, but tell us more.
That is a very good introduction because it is not completely correct. The name is the Vertical Farm Institute and not farming. And farming implies that we are doing an activity, which in a sense we are doing, but we are all about the building. And the building is important. So what we're trying to achieve is transferring traditional agricultural land into a building and stacking it into in a vertical way. So to save land surface that is being used for traditional agriculture, but also to create an environment that is better controllable for the crops to grow. Mm-hmm. So we phase out the usage of herbicides, pesticides and fungicides. And we try to set up these buildings, these urban farming, it's also oftentimes called, these vertical farms in cities itself. So we really try to produce the food where it is being consumed and therefore also trying to cut transportation costs as much as we can.
The idea behind is to save land?
Mm-hmm. Among them. So this movement, or at least the founder of our research institute, came from a very strong conviction that we need to think about fossil fuel consumption and CO2 emissions, and he got a bit obsessed with the peak oil curve. And from there on, what is most important is to think about the fossil fuel emissions from different sectors. And if you look at agriculture, that is one of the biggest emitters of CO2 emissions. And additionally to that, there is another sector, transportation, that's also a huge CO2 emitting sector. So what we see is there is a combination between those two sectors, agriculture and transportation. So one, yes, we are trying to reduce land surface for agriculture, and two, cutting transportation costs. And additionally, you have this controllable environment, so you can produce year-round same produce, so the same crop type, for example, and you are not dependent on weather conditions from the outside.
But isn't that extremely artificial?
That's a super good question. This is being perceived in different ways in different places in the world. In Europe, it is quite difficult or different because we oftentimes have the feeling, sort of a romantic feeling of the farmer on the field and with his hands in the dirt and shoveling, and this is a very strong image that I think resides a lot in Europe. But if you compare it, for example, with Japan, where vertical farming is quite big, this is completely redundant for them. This doesn't matter. And also, in all honesty, I think traditional agriculture as it is at the moment is already very artificial. And if you think about the production methods and the fertilizers that go into the soil, and a personal statement, I think it goes very far away from nature at this point, how we use agriculture. But it is definitely something. If you say, "Oh, I'm selling you this salad or these tomatoes, and they're grown inside a building, like they weren't open in the air," yeah, then people have a feeling like, "Ooh, yeah, that is a bit artificial, maybe." But I think it's I think it's not.
So is this idea of vertical farming is relevant mainly for big cities? Why did you start it in Austria?
Very good question. I mean, yeah, in relative terms, you could say Austria is a small city or Austria is a big city. I think Austria is big enough for a vertical farm. Yeah, it has to do with circumstances, of course. The founder was living in Austria and studying architecture, so that is a point. But another very interesting topic is that something a lot of Austrians do not realize is that they were the pioneers in the field of vertical farming. In the 60s, 70s and 80s, there was a company called by the name of Rutner, and that was the owner of this company. He was in the steel industry, but he made a lot of money with steel, and then he started doing something else, and he started doing vertical farming. So in the beginning of the 60s, I think they set up some of the first prototypes in the Donau Park.
And in the 60s,
yeah. And this is before we really understood what photosynthesis is and how it works. And these guys were really pioneers, and he made a lot of money with the steel industry, so he had a lot of opportunity to experiment. And we are in the fortunate situation at the moment that we work with his son, who is still alive, and setting up the archive of that company. And we found out that worldwide they were building around 39 to 40 vertical farms, and then we're talking about Canada, Ontario, but also the Middle East and Libya, Tehran in Iran, and more than 10 I think in Austria already.
Is there a project in Austria, a real project besides the research projects?
Not active on what you would say the scale that we perceive it as a significant project. We are close to starting several, but we are now
in Vienna.
In Vienna. The interesting thing again, the last still standing vertical farm, so to say, is in Kurpark Oberla, the Rutner Tower, and we are very close to reactivating it. We're working with the Klima- and Energiefond. And our partner consortium of experts and companies that also work on this too, trying to reactivate that. And we hope that we can get the go to start in January with the first initial research and design, and then from there on, build it again.
Are there a lot of competitors worldwide to your institute?
Also an interesting question. I think we are quite unique in what we are doing. So yes, if you see, vertical farming is really taking off now. In a time span of 4 years, I think we went from 8 to 80 to 8,000 vertical farms worldwide, and you see a very large increase at the moment happening in the US, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia is really taking off. Southeast Asia due to the fact of their big cities, and the Middle East because they want to produce their own food and not import it, which is very understandable. It is also convenient to grow it where you produce it, and with a vertical farm having an uncontrollable environment, so you're not dependent on the weather conditions. You can produce in the middle of the desert in a fairly sustainable manner. So this is really taking off, but it is a bit different than what we are doing. They are really setting up very large-scale plant factories, and this is like, you just imagine a cube, a box as a building and it has no glass, nothing, but only LED lights and rows and trays of plants growing in there. And this is sort of on a mass production. The only thing, this is feasible, economically feasible, if you have very cheap energy prices, because those LED lights consume a lot of energy. It to an amount where it is almost it almost nullifies the energy you save with transportation. So this is for us not feasible to do this in Europe at the moment, because our energy prices are much higher than, for example, the Middle East. So we are a bit different, and I don't think that we are therefore competing with anybody, that we propose a building typology that has that is semi-open. So we have the first initial phases where we could grow these crops with LED lights, yes, but we want to also incorporate the sunlight more. So there will be a greenhouse element in our buildings, and not only this transparent facade or rooftop allows us to use that sunlight, it also coming back to that point of artificial, it also opens up the building a little bit for people to see what's happening in there. And I think that's also where we come in and are quite unique. We see this point as, your tomato is coming from inside a building, but if you close it off and nobody ever gets in or nobody sees it or whatever, then it will always become a bit of a distance between you and the food. And what we really want to achieve, of course, without harming that controllable environment, so there needs to be some kind of, some spaces people can go in and others not, probably. But we really want to re-emphasize that connection between what we are eating and how our food is being grown. And this is, maybe I'm going too far off topic now, but this is also for us important as a social impact a vertical farm can have for a neighborhood. Thinking about education and connecting people again with how hard it is to grow lettuce and how much we oftentimes take for granted when we go into the supermarket and find our produce.
Reconnect the farming process with the eating process.
Yeah, definitely. And raising that awareness also, like, guys, it is winter now and we're eating an avocado that comes from Ecuador.
We shouldn't eat avocado.
Anyway. but is that? But we shouldn't. Of course, it is. I think it goes against all the trends what we're seeing at the moment. Like it is not decreasing because of we are raising awareness at the moment. But maybe we can rethink where we source our food from, and maybe at the moment we are not yet there. Technology-wise speaking, to grow an avocado, I think in a vertical farm, maybe there are some really crazy things going on. I don't think so yet, but the first steps are there to do that and actually have that avocado here.
Isn't that a wonderful example, your Vertical Farm Institute, that Austria can, with the resources, with the creative resources, with the intelligence in this country, create wonderful products to export, ideas to export into other countries? Because as far as I assume, a vertical farming in Austria wouldn't be that huge success because of natural reasons as it would be in other cities, other countries, where there are bigger cities, bigger problems. So this is a perfect example for export of ideas produced in Austria, and ideas are a wonderful means of creating export aside from products.
Yes and no to that question. I think there's like a really good basis of expertise in Austria, and I think looking at the partners that we have at the moment, they're doing state-of-the-art things, which makes us very happy. And we want to build on that knowledge and to increase that understanding of what is the vertical farm and what can it be. At the same time, also Austria imports 40% of its produce from outside the country, and and of course a lot of that food goes to Vienna with 2 million on a total population of 8 million. It is a significant amount of people living here. Having 10 vertical farms in Vienna within 10 years, that is not a strange idea for me, especially when you make it energy efficient and economically feasible. Yeah, then of course, then Austria can also benefit from it. So there are two sides of that coin, I think. And if I look back to my own country at the moment, the Netherlands as the second largest food producing country worldwide, and it is, I think, a third of the size of Austria. That is crazy for me. On what you see at the moment with regards to vertical farming, they actually do this. They do it a lot, but not necessary to implement it in their own country, but to sell turnkey solutions around the world. And they are ahead in this, but I don't think, because they're not doing it for themselves, but selling the technology, I think they're also becoming less and less critical of what it is that they are selling, and if it really solves anything for themselves. I don't think so. But maybe the Netherlands doesn't have a problem. I mean, of course it do, but with all these greenhouses around, then the food security is much higher in the Netherlands than maybe in Austria at the moment. Austria imports quite a lot still, and that we can reduce that a little bit. I'm not saying that vertical farming is the solution, but it is 100% part of it. And just by thinking the cities are gonna increase, urbanization is gonna, there's gonna be more population, and all those mouths need to be fed. Yeah, why not try to do a little bit next to your own door? And in addition to that, with climate change and worsening climate zones, I heard, I now live in Vienna for a year, but I heard people that the weather is also getting extreme here, and that the spring is almost non-existent, and that the autumn also goes by quite quickly. If those weather conditions become more extreme in Austria, then it becomes also harder to grow the crops you are used to be growing here. And if you can grow those indoor, then maybe there is a way forward too. So it is also maybe, I would say we needed it yesterday and not today to be ready for tomorrow.
Wir werden immer mehr Menschen, wir wollen immer mehr essen, man kann nicht nur von Krapfen leben. Das Klimathema ist ein riesiges. Hier ist ein intelligentes Projekt im Entstehen, oder es ist bereits da, im Wachsen. Vertical Farming, das Vertical Farm Institut in Österreich, ist ein Ding, das hier Probleme lösen kann, das eine exportfähige Idee ist, also ein Paradebeispiel für intelligente Innovation, auch im Sinne der 17 Sustainable Development Goals der UNO, die ja nicht nur 17 Problemfelder, sondern hochgerechnet einmal über den Daumen gepeilt 17.000 ungegründete Unternehmen sind. Das Vertical Farm Institut ist eines von denen. Die Generation E lebe hoch, die Generation der Unternehmer, der Entrepreneure, hier zusammengefasst in diesem Manifest, das es bei uns bei der Julius Raab Stiftung zum Download gibt oder auch zum Bestellen. Emile, Stöver, thank you for being here. Thank you for your work, for your inspiration you're bringing with your team. It's a huge team already. That's not a one-man show and a one-person show. Das ist im Café Julius immer gern gesehen, und ich freue mich, wenn wir uns bald wiedersehen. Und Belauschen ist ja bei uns nicht nur erwünscht, sondern ausdrücklich erlaubt. Bis bald.